Hey everyone, Scott Finley here with Georgia Plumbers Trade Association. Today we're doing a flush on a Renai tankless system. There's a lot of different manufacturers. You got Norritz, Rheem, Navien, and if you install one of these, it's something you're going to have to do at least once in its lifespan. You want to follow the manufacturer's recommendations. But this is a video I wanted to show you because it's one of those things that is preventing some people from wanting to move to tankless. Here in North Georgia, we've got pretty good water. I'm in the Chattahoochee River Valley, and our water is really clean coming through. I tend to, after I install one of these or a Navien, tell the customers I'll see you in 5 years. A lot of manufacturers will recommend at least once every 3 years, but that's a factor when a customer is deciding whether or not they want to go ahead and upgrade from maybe 250-gallon gas tanks in series or in parallel to a tankless. If they know they got to pay $160 to $250 a year every so couple of years to have somebody come out and do that, that might be a situation where that would prevent them. Now, down below Macon, below the gnat line, a lot of you guys are getting your water out of aquifers and whatnot, and I know that that can come with quite a bit more lime scale. And so I know there's guys down in Florida that if they're getting a lot of heavy use out of these, they have to do these at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. But where we live up here in North Georgia, it's much less. And so just going to show you quickly how to do this. And if we can come down here, you can see underneath, I've already got my pump running. But all the manufacturers, and if they don't, there's a couple manufacturers that sell these really nice service ports right here. So you can see I've got my cold line coming in here. I got my hot line coming out right here. I've gone ahead and shut both of those off. All I've done here to connect, I've got a little Home Depot pump I got from Home Depot that's in that bucket and running. But most of your supply houses have these. Years ago I bought one at PDI. They had a kit with a solution and everything. And I've just got washer and dryer hoses hooked up to the pump, got the return, dump it back into the bucket. Most of your supply houses have tankless solution. I prefer to use distilled white vinegar. This is the kind you get from the grocery store, not the super concentrate that you get from the big box stores. If you use the more concentrated version of vinegar, it can, perhaps damage the inside of the coils on these. You don't want to, use that. If you're going to use vinegar, use regular, store vinegar. And I just filled enough up in that little 5-gallon bucket so that it can circulate inside the coils and get out any lime scale in the coils that is preventing proper flow. So, like I said, I've got that pumping right now. We're going to let this go for about an hour. When we get done, I'll show you the solution. It's usually a darker, sometimes a greenish color, usually a greenish color. And while we're doing that, I also want to show you a couple things that you can do. It's good to do on a Renai system. All right, one of the steps you want to take, and it doesn't matter which brand you're talking about, is to go ahead and take off a filter and make sure that's clean on the cold water line. So this one right here on another Renai unit just has a little screen like that right there, and it's got like a little rubber gasket there. And it doesn't matter which brand I've done, Renai, Navien, Bosch, they all seem to have something similar with that, with a little rubber gasket that you don't want to lose. And sometimes this filter's full of a lot of gunk in there, and you do want to clean it out. So that's definitely a step. I always keep one of these for every brand in my truck, and I also have examples. I have the little igniter packets. I got a bunch of screws from an old unit that I took apart, and I like to keep that on the truck in case especially like this little rubber gasket right here. I don't want to cut that and not have a spare on the truck, so I always keep a spare on the truck. I'm just going to put that one back in right there. Now, on the newer units that have the built-in recirculation, you're going to find this inside the unit itself, so you're going to have to take out the unit. It's down there in the bottom left corner. Same thing with a Navien. They've got a cold water recirculation filter inside the unit itself, and that's where you go ahead and take that out. But that's definitely an important step when you're servicing these units. Renai, you can take out the igniter system and clean that. So I'm going to show you that right now. They just have these plastic tabs here on the side. You just go ahead and pull those off, set them to the side. I've already got the other one there. and then they just got 4 screws here. When we get inside here, the only thing that really needs servicing, and this is where you see the igniter system in here. The only thing that needs servicing on here is you can go ahead and take this off and you can clean the ignition system. Unless the unit's been running for quite a few years, it's not necessary. But if this was an older unit and it was running, especially on the ones that run outdoor, you get a lot of carbon buildup on the ignition. On the igniter rod, I'm going to go ahead and show you one of those, because this one I know for sure didn't need it. But this little plate right here, that's what connects right here on the unit. And a lot of times we'll get carbon buildup on that right there. And all you need to do to clean this off is just take a little Scotch-Brite rag. Don't, use sandpaper or anything like that. Just a nice little Scotch-Brite cloth, and get that any carbon buildup. Just pull it a couple times, get any carbon buildup off of that as well, and then you'll reinstall that on the unit, plug it back in. But once again, that's not something that's typically necessary unless it's been outside getting a lot of heavy use and so forth. A couple things I want to show you about this unit. The fan system on this, we got the fan system on here that goes ahead and pulls it in. There is a little filter right here. I always check these. You can go ahead and pull that out. This one's perfectly clean because we're running off of inside air. You can see my air intake right here. And then I wanted to show you this. We've got outside air intake coming in for both the HVAC system and for this right here. This is a finished basement, so you can't just run it off of, if you had a large unfinished basement, you can read the manufacturer's instructions, and a lot of times you can run them off of outside or inside air. If not, usually what you do is you go ahead and run the air intake and pop it outside the building right there. And so this isn't a problem with this system because we've got clean inside, we've got the outside air intake, but essentially it's coming in here to clean inside air. So we've got that filter right there, and it's clean as a whistle. But one thing I want to show you is if these machines, if they pull in a lot of insects, because a lot of times you'll have the air intake and you'll have the flue, the gas flue, roughly the same location. On the manufacturer specifications on Rinnai, you want, of course, the flue pipe on the exterior to be above the air intake system, so those hot gases can go ahead and float up, and that will attract bugs a lot of time. And so this is the fan that I've taken out of an older Rinnai unit, and you can get cockroaches in here as well. But moths are attracted to that carbon dioxide. They'll get into this fan, and if you can see real close inside this fan, really small fan blades right there. Those insects like to get minced up in there, and they will actually go into the burner unit itself. And so I've gone ahead and pulled out a burner unit from another Rinnai Tankless, and you can see these really thin fins on there right there. And when I took this out of that other unit, and all it is right here is these screws come undone from this. You pull this out right here. When I pulled this out of that other unit, it was full of what just basically looked like flour, like kitchen flour. Just a fine white powder in there, or even baking soda. And that's all those insects carcasses that have been chewed up by that fan, got sucked in here, and basically started clogging up the ability of the system to breathe. And so you just pull it out, get your compressed air, blow all that stuff out, put it back in the unit, go ahead and put the igniter's rod back in, and you're good to go. All right, I'm out here on the exterior of the house, and this is the exhaust flue pipe as it leaves the house. One thing you'll notice is this little screen on the outside of it, and this was just put on by the the plumbers upon an installation. Nothing wrong with this one right here. They just did it with some screws and put that on there. There are, at your supply house, there are glue-on fittings that have essentially that same screen right there, which you'll just go ahead and glue it right onto there, and with some PVC glue, and so you don't have to just necessarily pick that up at a hardware store or anything like that. So one of the obstacles that keeps people from putting these on the interior is they want to go ahead and run the exhaust flue through an exterior brick wall, and that can be intimidating for some people. I've used a simple demolition hammer, and what I like to do is I'll put it right there. Make sure you can get the side angle so you can see. I like to put it right there so I can split a brick in half, and then once I got the brick split in half, I just go ahead and work that joint there, work that joint right there, work that joint right there, and get it all loosened up, and then I usually can pull those right out, and it's not a hard thing to do. So you might ask why you just don't hang the thing on the side of the building, and this is what I don't like about it. I don't have enough overhang here on this building, and I've, you know, even though these things are guaranteed for life, I've had a situation where they're all rusted out of after only about 10 to 15 years. Not to mention the fact in Metro Atlanta, we have a situation in a lot of neighborhoods where if you know, just turn the meter off at the street, cut, somebody could walk off with thousands of dollars worth of plumbing equipment. So for me, I always prefer to put, you know, the tankless on the inside, and then the trusty old demolition hammer, boom, 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 and you're good to go. Now, a couple things about these units and when you're going to install them, and this is the things that a person, and really who this video is for, is I have talked to quite a few plumbers at our classes who are still convinced, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and put a 50-gallon gas water heater in. And there's a couple instances when a tankless really is a great unit to use. Of course, the big advantage of these things is that they're more efficient than our tanks. But as we know, back around 2014, they changed the energy requirements on our tank systems, and our tanks got bigger. They were just more insulated, and so they have gotten better. But at the same time, this system right here is only going to run when it's calling for hot water, when somebody in the house is pulling demand for hot water. So you'll find, you know, if you have a home with just the husband and the wife living there, or, you know, a smaller tiny home, this is a unit that could save them a lot of energy, because you're not just keeping 50 gallons heated the whole time. I was with a couple plumbers the other day with Atlantis Plumbing, plumber named Jackie, master plumber. She's forgotten more plumbing than I'll ever know. And we were over there putting it in, and the reason for that install was the homeowner had a 50-gallon gas, and they had bought one of the new walk-in type tubs that you close the door. It was an older gentleman, and you close the door, and of course that fills up a whole lot of hot water. And with their old 50-gallon tank, of course it was an older unit, but still they were not able to fill that whole tub up all the way. So if you have a customer that has one of these massive luxury jetted tubs in their house, or like the walk-in tub that I've just described, then that's a good option, because this is never going to run out of hot water. It's just going to keep burning and delivering hot water on demand. Think about back in the old days when we would get a customer that would want to go from a 50-gallon gas and maybe put another 50-gallon gas in parallel right next to it. One of the situations I would have is I'd have a customer who, as their kids got older, and if you're my age, your kids go through the teenage years, they're fine when they're younger, all of a sudden they get their teenage years. I had a daughter and a son, and between husband, wife, daughter, son, that 50-gallon gas just doesn't want to keep up. And this is when this can be a really a lifesaver. Another situation you might be interested in talking to a customer about doing one of these is, we're starting to see a lot of families in Atlanta where multiple families are moving into a traditional large home. I had one customer that had family members come over from India for 4 to 5 months at a time, and all of a sudden he goes from having 4 to 5 people in the house to having 10, 11 people in the house. And he, you know, at first wanted to talk about 2 twin 50s in parallel, and I convinced him to go to the tankless unit, because he would never have to worry whether 100 gallons was going to be enough or not. This would just provide all his needs. So there's some basic points, some selling points to your customers about why you would want to go to a tankless. Now, I also want to talk about what's different about when you're installing these. One of the things that prevents a lot of people on an older home of putting a tankless water heater is your traditional metal flue pipe that goes up and it comes out through the roof of the house. On these units, this one right here is a condensing unit. They do have the non-condensing unit, but on the condensing units, and these condensing units that are sold by Rinnai, Navien, all the big companies that produce these, they produce a lot of condensation, and you cannot have those exhaust flue gases go straight up and out through the old metal pipe, because of course it's going to rust, and then boom, you got carbon monoxide poking through the interior walls or in the attic of the house, and it's a hazard. So these aren't plug and play like, you know, just taking out an old 50-gallon gas and putting in a new 50-gallon gas. You'll see up here we got 2-inch PVC on the flue pipe going out. We got 2-inch PVC on the air intake right there. And this one here, Rinnai likes a slope of 1/4 inch, just like you would on a regular waste pipe, on your exhaust flue going out, so that as it's going through this air-conditioned space, and you got hot hot flue gases going through that pipe, coming in contact with the air-conditioned air on the outside, of course, with condensation. And that condensation is able to just go, Rinnai and all our other Navien and Noritz and all these companies, they have it set up so that that condensation can drip in here and go right out through our condensation drip line as it would on any. We got our condensation drip line right here pumped over to a sewage ejection pump right there, and it's going, of course, this one's going down into a trap system right there with the Studer vet. But that's where that's coming from, is that condensation's the machine's able to handle that and take it out through there. So you cannot pipe a tankless into a traditional metal pipe. And you'll see, if you go on the internet, you'll see there's videos. Duravent, Rinnai teams with a company called Ubink, and they have up here a collar where you have an exterior pipe and an interior pipe all in one pipe. Duravent, I just installed one recently. It went through an attic, popped out through the roof, and it was a really easy install because it was a flat roof with a rubber membrane. And basically at the termination above the roof, you got the flue gases going out and the new air intake going through the same one. These ones are really easier because we all know how to run our waste piping with 2-inch and all our fittings right here. And like I said, this one right here, we've already got the outside air intake, but if you mounted this on the side of somebody's basement or the side of their garage, you can go ahead and run this and just pop it right out the side of their house, cut through hardy, cut through vinyl siding, and they usually come with little white escutcheons that you can put on the exterior when you put those protrude those to the side of the building. If you're looking at a brick house, you might say to yourself, well, now I got to cut through brick. What do I do now? Simple demolition hammer with a 2-inch blade on it. You put that right on the middle of a brick and hit it really light. Boom, tends to pop right in half. And then all you got to do is, once again, that 2-inch blade, cut out joint, cut out joint, cut out joint, pull that brick out, and you can have those exhaust flue gases going out through your exterior right through brick too. So this isn't so much as an instructional video to show people how to install a tankless, as much as it is just the idea that you guys can do this. We don't need to be in a situation where we're talking to people around the state and they're resistant or unwilling to talk to a customer who wants to put in a tankless and not offer the option of putting in the tankless. This is, if you can put in the 50-gallon and you've been doing plumbing as long as many of y'all have, this isn't something you need to be intimidated by. There's lots of people on there that make repair videos on, I know there's a guy down in Florida who dubs himself the Rinnai guy. You can learn a lot watching his videos. There's a lot of videos for every manufacturer put these in. We're here in Georgia, so in Peachtree City, Georgia is where Renai has their training session, and you can go down there and get it's usually like a 8-hour course to get your training session on installation and service of one of these units. But all manufacturers have them, and that's going to be dependent on your supply house. Our supply house that I worked with for years, they sold Renai. I'm with a new supply house now. They're selling Navien, so I've switched to Navien. I go ahead and give all the specs to my salesman. He tells me exactly what I need, and we go ahead and get the right unit for the right setup for the homeowner. So it's not something you need to be intimidated by. They have classes for all the manufacturers you can go to and learn installation, and then you've got salesmen at your local supply houses that are willing to help. All right, so another thing that might be preventing you from wanting to put these in is when these systems, tank water heaters is really basic. You got your gas, you got your water coming in, and then a lot of you guys have worked with them so long, you just troubleshoot when the gas supply is having an issue or the igniter's having an issue, and you just take that off the front, put a new one on. And this is no different. These things only get upset when their water flow gets restricted, which we're servicing that right now, and that's not going to be a problem. They also don't like it, if there's too much water pressure or not enough water pressure. Once again, that's a PRV issue. And that's a lot of houses you go into service, PRV is an issue anyway. Nobody, thinks on their own to call the plumber and have their PRV swapped out until it becomes a problem. So, that's one of the things that will make these units throw a code or be upset is the water pressure. The big one though is, and I already referred to the one, is air flow restriction. So we've checked our filter, we've got everything coming through clean and everything. But if we don't have any airflow restriction, like I showed you with the heat exchanger a minute ago, gas pressure, that's another big one, is that when you're going from a 50-gallon gas, a lot of times they'll have our half-inch line coming out right there. And this one is too. We've got a 3/4 gas line, course size down to a half-inch gas line. But because we're so close to this unit, that's offering a heck of a lot of quantity to this. But I'm in a separate video, I'm going to show you here in a second on paper how to go around and add up your BTUs on the house and make sure that this isn't going to suck down more BTUs than the rest of the house can handle. And so you'll walk around to your gas fireplace, your stove, and you'll add up the BTU consumption on those, add it to the BTU consumption on this, and these take a lot of gas. Okay, when you put one of these in, it's going to want to suck down for your average meter somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of the capacity. You want to make sure that. All right, I just wanted to show you this. You want to make sure that your gas pressure coming into the unit, if you throw a code on this and it's telling you that your gas pressure is not what it wants to be, it's a simple device, gas manometer right here. Renai puts a port right up underneath here where it says gas. You would go ahead and shut off the gas control valve, let the unit burn out, clear out all the gas, take that Phillips head screwdriver off right there, put that slip fitting over that, connect it to your manometer, and you can talk to the techs at Renai over the phone to get the exact readings and whatnot. You might, in some municipalities though, you might be in a situation where your gas pressure needs to be regulated, and they do sell little aftermarket gas regulators. They're very similar to the ones you would put on you'll see underneath your gas stove. That if you've installed your gas ranges and so forth, that little gas regulator that you'll go ahead and put in between the line and the back of the stove. The higher end models of these come with recirculation built into them. Now this particular unit does not. It's one of the ones prior to recirculation being included in the unit. But essentially what they have is they have the main burner, and they can either have a section of that burning a small amount, or they have like a little side burner in it. And what that allows it to do is, just like the Watts pump perhaps that you put on top of your 50-gallon gas to pump water through the hot water line, either through or of course the other one is Grundfos, but to run through a dedicated recirculation line, or if some of you guys aren't familiar, this is just a crossover, simple crossover tee that goes up underneath the sink. And I put them in the master bathroom because, of course, those are the people who are paying the bills, and those are the people who want instant hot water. This is how you achieve instant hot water. Yes, this will produce instant hot water on demand, but it's still going to take the regular amount of time to get to the master bathroom or to the kitchen sink as it normally would. This will provide recirculation and will actually allow hot water to be pushed through the hot water line, go up into wherever you locate this underneath the sink. This is your little crossover check valve, and all it does right there underneath the sink is it'll let a weak flow go through the hot line into the cold line and return back to the unit and come back in here. And so that's one thing to think about when you're talking to customers. A lot of you guys are probably used to talking to a customer and saying, hey, we're putting this 50-gallon unit in. Would you like me to go ahead and have instant hot water and turn your hot and cold system into a recirculation line? Same thing we're doing here. A lot of the higher end units that you know, Rinnai, Navien, Rheem, Bosch, they're putting out, their high end units have a small recirculation setup built into them.
Okay, I'm up underneath the sink in the master bathroom, and I went ahead and took the P-trap out because this was a weird configuration and I didn't want it to get in the way. But we have the hot right here coming into the T, and that can automatically pass and go up to the faucet. But when the faucet's not turned on, what's actually happening is right here in between is a little valve that's allowing hot water to trickle from the hot side into the cold side and go back to the water heater over there. And it's just a really simple installation. Anybody can do this. You'll see some brands have a really fancy system for this. Navien's got like a bigger, more robust looking unit that they put underneath the sink, and I'm sure other brands do as well, but it's the same concept. You got your hot water being pushed through a little valve right there, and then going back to the cold to the water heater. And then but when you go ahead and demand water from the sink, when you cut that on, that'll slam shut and allows that water to stop trickling through. Now, one of the things I always ask customers is, what faucet do you get your drink from in the middle of the night? Because you know, we have these double vanities, and I'll go ahead and throw it on the side that's not closest to the bathroom door, so that if somebody gets a cup of water at night, it's not lukewarm water, it's a
actually
cold.
The code now says if you're going to put recirculation, if you're going to go ahead and put one of these units in, it's got the recirculation. It needs to be a situation where it's on-demand circulation. And so they want some device in that room, in the master bathroom, where it can go ahead and sense that the customer's walked in and that water's going to be needed in the near future, and it'll go ahead and start this small trickle of hot water into the master and, you know, back to the unit. It'll go ahead and do that automatically. The code is saying now that you gotta, and I'll provide that code later, insert that code here. The code's saying that you want that. However, most of these units now have smart apps, and you can go ahead and have that app installed on the customer's phone, and they can set it up for a recirculation schedule to only do it during waking hours. It's what I have at my house. I have it set for going off for when my wife and I wake up in the morning and take our showers. So it's only running about 2 hours a day, and then again we'll run it at night to, you know, when around dinner time when we're using a lot of hot water. We'll only set the recirculation demand to go off during those times. But those apps also have one where you could literally take your phone, wake up in the morning, hit a button knowing you're about to take a shower in 15 minutes, and we'll go ahead and start that recirculation process and heat up your pipes going out. one of the other things I want to talk about is, you'll notice right here we got just our normal T&P valve right on the side of the machine, like you would on any other tank water heater, and that's running out once again, going to a trap system in our waistline. But what you don't see on this unit, if you can go ahead and back out, if you're used to putting 50-gallon or 40-gallon gas units, what you don't see, thermal expansion tank. We don't have one here. And the reason for that is, in theory, how thermal expansion works in the tank, of course, is that heats up, and if it's overheated and that heated water has nowhere to go, the thermal expansion tank on the side of the 50-gallon will go ahead and accept that overpressured water and that overheated water and go ahead and fill up that thermal expansion tank. So you might ask yourself, well, why don't we have one here? The answer is, we don't have a big boiling tank of water that could overheat and explode in this situation. This is only going to provide hot water when it's being demanded of hot water. And so, in theory, and I say in theory because this, I'm about to tell you what's changed in some people's view. In theory, we should never have a situation where thermal expansion causes too much pressure on the system. However, like I said, I was out with Atlantis Plumbing out of Dallas, Georgia a couple weeks ago, and Jackie had a very, very small thermal expansion tank, fit in the palm of my hand. I think the company, I remember it was Zumwalt or something like that. But I'll show you a picture a little bit later of one of these. But Jackie was referring to it as a hand grenade, and it literally was right under here on the cold water line. He just put a T on it, and he had this tiny little thermal expansion, and that was tank, and that was Navien was essentially had told his salesman at his supply house, hey, we want you to put this very, very small thermal expansion tank right on the cold water line, just like you would on a 50-gallon gas, and that was going to be enough to handle any issues with thermal expansion. And so, far as I know, Navien's the only one doing it. You can see we got a Renai system here. This was installed back in 2017. This one doesn't have it. Most of the ones you're going to see, because it wasn't deemed necessary, you're not going to see that on the unit itself, and they just don't need it. But like I said, we're starting to see companies are putting some measure of thermal expansion on there. And just wanted to take a minute to show you, that's what we got when we're done there. Significantly, we essentially started with a clear solution, and much darker solution right there is what you'll see when we're done. I'm going to go ahead and dispose of that. Alright, so now that we're done right here, I went ahead and disconnected the hoses right there. Well, before I disconnected the hoses, I went ahead and shut the service valves, both coils positioned right there. Went ahead and put the caps back on, open the hot, open the cold, and then before you plug the unit back in, you want to go back over to your nearest hot water line and go ahead and purge. You want to get all the air out of the system before you plug it back in. So I ran it for about 10 minutes, and the other thing it helps to do is it helps get the vinegar out. You actually can taste it in the water because you did have vinegar or whatever solution go through there. Go ahead and run that hot water for about, probably about 5 minutes. Get all that hot water purged out of the system, and then come back over here, plug your unit back in, demand for hot water, go over to the sink, and I got reading right there. Of course, it's giving me 120. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and put the cover on, button this unit back up, and we've got a happy customer, and then we'll be on our way.